Here's a question. How does a man responsible for the deaths of millions of his countrymen still command respect in his own country? And even more pertinently, what can the world expect from a leader who has nothing but admiration and respect for this man's ideology? We're referring to Mao Zedong, the revival of Maoism in China, and even Xi Jinping's appropriation of Mao's legacy. Here's an in-depth report.
That's the trouble with dictators. Depending on how they choose to act, they can do great things, but they can also single-handedly inflict great harm. Some never face the consequences of their actions. Kim Il-sung and Stalin died in office and were mourned. Hitler committed suicide, while others like Nicolae Ceausescu and Benito Mussolini were brought down and executed. Time isn't kind to dictators. Most stand uncovered and reviled in the annals of history. In the 20th century's rogues gallery, one despot stands out. Not just for the unimaginable devastation he wrought on his own people, but because Mao Zedong still occupies a hallowed central place in contemporary China. On October 1st, 1949, Mao proclaimed the formation of the People's Republic of China. Celebrated today as China's National Day, the occasion is marked by military parades and other activities at Beijing's Tiananmen Square. At one end of this square stands a mausoleum that still teems with people who come to pay obeisance to Mao's statues and his embalmed body that lies in a glass case. Almost half a century after his death, Mao is omnipresent at a place considered the seat of power in China. In 2019, on the 70th anniversary of the Communist Party's rule in China, Xi Jinping, along with other senior leaders of the Communist Party, paid tribute to Mao and his legacy. That legacy, in most countries around the world, is synonymous with hair-brained socio-political experiments that led to millions of deaths. Mao's great leap forward led to the greatest famine in history. Over 45 million Chinese, mostly in rural areas, are believed to have perished, and another 15 to 20 million reportedly died during the Cultural Revolution that followed in the 1960s. To put that into context, that's more deaths than the 55 million people who died worldwide during the Second World War. There's not much room for interpretation here. Mao Zedong's legacy is one of unspeakable horror and brutality. The Communist Party of China takes a slightly less severe view. On May 16, 2020, the Communist Party's main newspaper, The People's Daily, broke a 50-year silence on Mao's Cultural Revolution. It urged citizens to fix in our memories the historic lessons of the Cultural Revolution. Doesn't sound contrite enough? By the Communist Party standards, which isn't really known for acknowledging errors of judgment by its leaders, it's nothing short of an extraordinary admission. Still, the magnitude of Mao's follies and the sheer number of people affected has made it impossible for the Communist Party to wipe Mao's slate clean.
I thought the Chinese people had really been liberated. We were free and would not be oppressed anymore. Everyone could speak their minds. I was very excited, but in the end, I realized it was never to be.
And yet, nostalgia for Mao has been on the rise in China. Chinese citizens are aware of Mao's follies, but see him as a national hero nonetheless. In the 1980s, China was one of the poorest but most equal societies in the world. Today, for the have-nots in China, Mao represents a fairer, more classless society. Ironically, Mao's exhortation to peasants and workers to take up arms and overthrow the elites is as relevant in China today as it was in 1949.
In the old village, we could cultivate cows and pigs. We could still have incomes even when we are too old to move, but here we have no income.
Today, China has one of the most severe income inequalities in the world, with the richest 1% of households owning a third of the country's wealth. The Communist Party's resurrection of Mao's legacy is not hard to comprehend. At the end of the day, for the party to reject Mao is tantamount to repudiating the party itself. In today's context, the party can channel Maoism's rejection of Western values to stem the growth of liberal values and promote what Deng Xiaoping called a spiritual civilization. After Mao's death in 1976, Deng Xiaoping built a system to decentralize power amongst individuals in the party. His aim was to prevent another dictator, another Mao, from taking over China. Today, Xi Jinping has dismantled that system and become de facto president, commander of the PLA and general secretary of the Communist Party for life. He's also enshrined his own version of socialism, Xi Jinping thought, into the Chinese constitution. No surprise then that he is reappropriating Mao's legacy to legitimize his political career.
He has established his authority over the army and the police, as well as the party and state apparatus. It looks like he is emerging as a strong man, and that he is able to handle authority and exercise power more smoothly than, for example, ex-President Hu Jintao.
Xi quotes Mao often and has made several trips to sites like the mausoleum in Tiananmen Square, commanded party officials to forever hold high the banner of Mao Zedong thought, and appointed himself chairman of everything. Sounds familiar? The old adage keeps coming true. Absolute power does corrupt, especially when power becomes divorced from remorse, from guilt. And the people who wield that power lose touch with reality. That's usually the point when, deluded about their own fallibility and isolated by an unquestioning coterie, that dictators make catastrophic decisions based on whim and instinct. The impact of this ignorance is usually disastrous for the people and states they rule over. As far as Mao goes, retribution for his misguided policies and brutal purges is perhaps precisely what's happening in China today. His ideas and his legacy are being popularized to promote pro-market capitalism and consumerism. He must be turning in his grave.